is brought to you by School for Life, intended to help you reflect on and sharpen your leadership and teamwork skills. Before I begin, I'd like to introduce Emma to you all. So, Emma Reynolds Middleton is founder and master trainer at Soft Skills Zone LLC. There was a turning point when she was in college, and the whole concept of skill zone, when the whole concept of soft skill zone came to her mind, is when Emma had a meltdown while giving us public speech, and that's when she decided on something like soft skill zone. Emma is a US Army veteran who served on active duty and in the US Army Reserves as a finance officer. She devoted over 25 years leading teams and has worked in accounts payables, budgeting, quality assurance, program administration, and in workforce development in Korea, Kansas, and Atlanta, Georgia. For 14 years, she worked at the Centers of Disease Control. Emma has also worked at the Georgia Department of Labor, Georgia Industries for the Blind, and in the construction industry. At the same time, Emma has always been an engaged community leader too. For over 2 decades, she taught pro bono soft skills courses to adults and youth at various schools and nonprofit organizations. In 2016, and as a STEM professional herself, Emma became a part time adjunct faculty at Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, Georgia, in Suwanee, Georgia, with the School of Professional and Applied Psychology, the Organizational Development and Leadership Program. She teaches soft skills, including team dynamics, and has taught communication for leaders to graduate students seeking a Master of Science in Biomedical Sciences. Emma personally and professionally has realized the value and benefits of soft skills development. When she resigned from the workforce to pursue her second career, she made a smooth transition into what she's currently doing at Soft Skills Zone, training, credentialing, and coaching others in soft skills development for their personal and professional success. So, totally excited and not wasting any more time, I would hand it over to Emma. Just one thing, all of you, you'd be able to ask questions towards the end of the talk. So, don't worry about it. You would be able to interact with Emma. So, Emma, over to you.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. I wish I could see you, but I know you're out there. I'm excited to be here today. I bring you greetings from Atlanta, Georgia, where the time now is 11:36 a.m. How exciting is that? I am glad to be here. I thank God for the invite. I am thankful to the university, UPS. I had a chance to also visit what you all are doing, and that's exciting. And I want to get right into our time as you are emerging leaders, as you are those that are really key for such a time as this. And so let's go ahead and get started. As I move into the presentation, the first thing I want to do is celebrate women and Women History Month. This is the month that women are recognized for the achievement, the contribution we've made, not only in our family, but in industries across the various industries. So I want to celebrate the women this month. And as we are doing that, I wanted to also just move right into my journey as we're getting started. As you heard, I spent 10 years in the U.S. Army as a finance officer. What that means is when I graduated from college with my undergraduate degree, I went on active duty as an officer, which means I was in charge immediately in leadership. And this is why leadership and team dynamic is so near to me, because I have had an opportunity to apply the principles that I'll be sharing with you all today since I was perhaps your age. And as you can see there, that's me, a young officer right out of college, immediately in leadership. In finance, what that would be equivalent to would be a branch manager at a bank. Just imagine you're 21 years old, you're overall responsible for millions and billions of dollars, you're responsible for paying the soldiers and other responsibilities. And then to fast forward, as we're looking at my journey, you'll see me here on the right, where after having spent those years in the workforce, starting out in the military, and then spending most of my professional career working in the federal government in different leadership positions, working in process improvement and quality assurance, I was at a pivotal time and decided that I wanted to pursue my passion. Because as you heard my story, when I was in college, the very first time I was in a competition, I had to give a speech. It was during that time when I was sharing that I had a meltdown. And what I like about the school that you're in, the life skills, those life skills are key. And we're going to look at two, the leadership, and we're going to look at the teamwork. And so here I was standing there in front of the audience, and I had a meltdown. I could not recall what I was going to share. But what I decided at that point was that that incident was not going to keep me trapped from every possibility. And that's one thing about a leader. A leader has tenacity, a leader has vision, a leader has determination. And we'll see how, even as students, you've served in leadership capacities throughout your life, perhaps in sports, perhaps in your community, even in your family, there are opportunities to lead. So, in one capacity or another, we've all served in leadership. And as I'm going forward, I had an opportunity to share about myself, but this presentation or this hour, it's about you. You are the shining star. You are the emerging leaders. You are those that are going marketing, whether it's sales, whether it's fashion or media, whatever the industry, your contributions are essential. And so, as I'm setting the stage for the next 45 minutes, I want to ask you a question since I had a chance to share about myself. Two questions I want to ask. And if you have pen and something to write on or your phone, just to jot down these two responses. The first question I want to ask you is, are you more task oriented or are you more people oriented? Now, I know, for example, I am more task oriented. However, there are times where the situation may cause for me to be more people oriented. So what I'm asking here, in the course of a day, are you looking to start a project, work on a project, or are you more relational? That's the people oriented. If you would respond to either or. And then the second question I want to ask, and that's going to be very key to our discussion, is are you an extrovert or are you reserved? Now, reserve, we heard reserve termed several other terms. We've heard it termed an introvert. And again, my general tendency, believe it or not, I'm more reserved. I like to observe, I like to watch, I like to read, I like to listen, I like to look. And if I'm in a setting, I may not be the first one to move forward in networking. So those are the two questions. Are you more task oriented or people oriented? And then the second, are you more of an extrovert or are you more reserved? Now, here's the great news. The great news is there are no wrong answers. Why? Because we all are wired differently. That's the beautiful part about even on a team, as we'll begin to see, every team member has contributions that he or she brings to the team. And that's the dynamic of the team. And so now that you have that information, let's move forward with our next part. We're going to start building a foundation from those two questions. So from those two questions, there are 4 possible responses that can develop from the questions. And here they are. That would be that you're either task oriented and an extrovert, or you're people oriented and you're an extrovert. Now, here are the other 2 options. You're either task oriented and you're reserved, or you're people oriented and you're reserved. Now, let me put a note here. What I'm doing now is a very, very consolidated process of an assessment that if you were to take the entire assessment to arrive at the answers to these questions, you would probably answer about 50 to 60 questions. So this is very abbreviated for the purpose of today's lesson. Now, with that, here's what the result from those 2 questions. We have a quadrant, and in the quadrant, we have what's called the DISC personality type. There's a D, there's an I, as you see the S, you see the C. That is a tool that is used, and there are other tools that's used to provide insight on how, I'll use myself, how I'm wired. Remember, I said we're all wired differently. What does that mean? That means that I process information and I come to decisions perhaps differently from what process you may use. And remember, it's all welcome. Every contribution is important. So the lens that I'll use as we're going through today's training is I'm going to look, and we're going to look through the lens of the DISC personality style to associate that information with leadership and teamwork. So, with that, remember, there's the D, there's the I, there's the S and C. And in the chat, are they able to type in the chat? If you are, I want to see those that, based on the very abbreviated assessment we did, identify yourself as a D. Can you type in the chat if you are a D? And as you are preparing or typing in the chat, let me provide some. Okay, I see a hand raised. I see some hand raised. Okay. Let me provide some insight. Now, why is this significant? Because as leaders or as emerging leaders, this information is helpful first because it's providing self-awareness. It's providing information on how we're making decisions and why we are performing tasks the way we do and why we relate to others the way we do. And so this is the purpose of the assessment. Now, if you have identified yourself as a D, here are some traits, some characteristics of those individuals who resonated with being task-oriented and an extrovert. A D personality style would be someone who's very direct, who's decisive, who's driven, who's strong-willed. Those are those individuals, they walk fast, they talk fast, they are result-oriented, they are very confident, they are typically looking globally, looking at the big picture, not into the details. Those are some of the traits of individuals who have identified themselves and even their leadership styles as D, direct, self-confident, daring, determined. So as we move on, the next possibility is the I. Where are my I's? If you would type in the chat or raise your hand, let's see those who have identified with and resonate with the I. Those individuals who are I, their personality type. They're very aspiring. They are impulsive. In fact, they're the life of the party. They are those who are very charismatic. You see them and you're drawn to them. You're not even sure why you're drawn to them, but it's because of the energy that they have. It's because of the enthusiastic that they maintain. They're very optimistic. They're those ones who inspire, as I shared, the team, inspire those who are feeling that they are without hope. Very positive and persuasive. Those are the individuals who have the personality type I. Now, we talked about the D, which is direct, determined, fast-paced. Then we just covered the I, inspiring, engaging, charming, optimistic. Next, let's look at the C's. Now, if you have identified yourself, where are the C's? If you've identified yourself as a C, now the C, now look at the quadrant. The C are those who are people oriented and they're reserved. These are those who are excellent listeners. You can go to them with anything and they will hear the rest of the story. Now, going back to the D, it's very likely the D, because that person is a fast pace, they want to know the end from the beginning. Just bottom line up front. Just tell me the bottom line. Whereas here, the pace, even the tone, even the volume perhaps of the S is softer, is calmer. When you think of professionals, these would perhaps be your healthcare professional, anyone, counselors, teachers, good listeners would be the S. They're very stable. Now, when we're thinking about stability and we're thinking about leadership and teams, and we've, over the past 2 years, have had this global pandemic, how do you think that disrupted those individuals who have the S personality type? And as leaders, first, again, we're doing self-awareness, but what we're also doing as we're taking an assessment, and as a leader, the leader will get to know his or her team members' personality type. So, again, for the S's, with the pandemic, perhaps even having to work remotely, the S personality like things the way they are. They don't necessarily want change. If it's not broke, don't fix it. So again, we're heightening awareness. They are supportive, very, very patient. Then there's one other quadrant that I'd like for us to look at. The fourth quadrant would be the C. We've talked about the D's. We've talked about the I's, the inspiring. We talked about the C's, the S, supportive. Now we're on the C's. This is the dispersonality. The C's are calculating, very cautious. The C's are those, now where are the C's? If you're a C, type in the chat that you're a C. You can relate to and connect with being task-oriented and reserved. Task-oriented and reserved. Now, the C's are those individuals who is going to make sure every I's dotted and every T's crossed. Those are your ones who strive sometimes even for perfection. And excellence is their standard. Now, they are reserved. They're into the details. They're very analytical. Think about accountants. Think about those who work in quality assurance and process improvement. They would fall in that category. So as you can see, as a leader, and when we're looking at leadership, We all come with different traits and capabilities. And the benefit of recognizing the traits of each one is you then are able to better communicate. You're able to perform more effectively as a team. Now, I want to introduce some information on leadership that is relevant and has been on the minds of leaders in industry. There are various surveys that have been gathering information from leaders on challenges they've had over the past 2 years. What are some of the challenges as a leader that you've experienced at Starbucks, at Amazon, at Facebook, at Procter and Gamble? What are some of the challenges global leaders have experienced during the pandemic? And this particular study shows the top 5 challenges that managers, leaders, C-suite executives have and are experiencing even now. And many have developed strategies that is helping them with their teams and their organizations. Now, employees have personal issues. As we know, I would say it was the same there as it was here, but I'll speak to here when the pandemic broke out, families had to homeschool or children were working from home, taking classes from home. Then that was a change in the dynamics. And that's a team. The family unit is a team. And so there were many personal concerns that leaders had to be mindful of as it related to their staff in order to get the outcome that the organization wants and desires from the workforce. Another concern for leaders is, and this is the question they're asking, how do we keep and retain top performers? Now, for you, you will be entering the workforce. So the question from your position is, how do I position myself to be a top performer? And I must tell you, one of the qualities that you're doing now is key, and that is developing those soft skills. Today's hiring official, today's leaders in organizations are desiring staff and job applicants that have the soft skills. Studies are showing that leaders are saying the soft skills, we want them to come with the soft skills. The technical hard skills, we can teach those skills to them on the job. So for yourself, continue to develop your soft skills. Another challenge was that of training. Then leaders had and have challenges balancing their responsibilities. And what I want to get to is maintaining collaboration between employees. That's teamwork. Today's leaders have been asking, how do I maintain my team when, for example, they're virtual, they're remote, they're working from home. In many cases, this was a new experience for many organizations. Now, there were organizations who had telework in place before the pandemic. However, there's a significant number of organizations and business leaders who were not prepared for the pandemic. And one of the ways they were not prepared was that of the telework, because there were elements in the team that was displaced because of the telework. Now, when they were in the office, it was very easy to gather, to meet, to collaborate, to network, to share information. However, what leaders experienced was that there were some learning curves that happened when the workforce became remote, and managers, leaders were looking at how do we keep the team engaged. Remember the different personality types that we looked at? Some of those personality types, for example, if we look at the S, supportive, don't like change, like things to stay as they are. Some of the team over the past 2 years have been completely displaced because it's beyond their sphere of comfort. And as a leader, leaders had to be creative, leaders had to be innovative and responsive and make decisions that would bring the team together. Now, some of the actions that leaders have taken to keep the virtual teams engaged is they've, especially if they're still virtual, they're having more meetings. They're sharing the information. One of the big keys to success as a leader, and what's fundamental to the success of a leader, is building trust in your team. Your team will work and do whatever is asked when they are informed, when they are many times a part of the process to develop a solution, and when they know what's ahead. Building trust is very key to leadership. And building trust takes time. Now, when you're in the office, it's not as challenging to build trust and to build relationships in the workforce. However, when you're remote, these were the growth pains that business leaders experience, that organizations experience over the past 2 years. How does that impact you now? That impacts you now because whether the leaders are still remote or whether they are in the office, what's going to be key to you and your success is communication skills. Now, again, one of the challenges that can be an opportunity for you and for your generation is effective communication. That's important to teamwork, working as an effective team and communicating effectively. So let's look at some traits of teamwork. Going back to the personality types. Now we're looking at the teams. Remember, we're all wired differently. We all respond to situations differently. As it relates to the team and those that have the D personality type, they want results and they want personal freedom. They're driven by power, winning, and competition. As I'm going through this section, be mindful of what we've experienced over the past 2 years and how that has impacted teams. And as a leader, what strategies must be developed in order to engage those that are Ds? And even for the leaders that are Ds, what might he or she do differently to engage those with different personality styles? So, losing control, was there a loss of control over the past 2 years? Absolutely, yes. Beyond our control. That's why it was lost. As such, this is a concern for individuals who have the D personality style. It has an impact on that individual, whether it's a leader or a team member. And as a result, guess what? It impacts the entire team. Now, let's look at those who are full of inspiration, who are charismatic. As it relates to teamwork, here's some things to be mindful of. How the I personality type, they appreciate social gathering. Did we have any social gathering, or did we have many social gathering over the past 2 years? Absolutely not. Because we did not have social gatherings over the past 2 years, or because they were limited, did that have an impact on team members who have the I personality type? Absolutely, yes. And as a leader of a team that have individuals that have that personality type, what is the solution? How can we keep those individuals engaged? Because they don't want to feel rejected. When they're not gathering, when they're not inspiring, it may feel to them that they're losing their influence. And we know that they appreciate a freedom of expression. They've been limited over the past 2 years, for example, limited to Zoom meetings, limited to virtual meetings, limited to phone calls. These are the ones they want to touch, they want to feel, they want to be there, they want to engage face to face. They love people. This has been a challenge. So if that was the case, what many organizations and leaders have done to engage those individuals, those team members who fall in this category, those were the organizations that when they had the virtual meetings and the team meetings, they also included some fun as a part of their meeting. They would have games on Friday. They would do virtual parties. This is very engaging to those that have the I personality type. Now, going back to the D's, it doesn't necessarily do anything, or the ones that have the D personality are not as inspired about the fun parts of the job as it relates to the I's. Again, the D, they are there to work. They're not there to play and have fun. So that's something to think about. Next, as we're moving on to the S personality style. Again, these are those individuals, whether they are leaders or their staff. These are those who are people oriented and reserved. Now, C is constant. These are those who don't want anything to change. In fact, if you go in their office, let's say you had a document to sign and you happen to borrow their pen and it was on the right side and you put it on the left side and they weren't in the office and they came back in the office, they wouldn't know that the pen was not in place. Where's my pen? I put my pen here. Why is my pen here on the left side? They don't want anything to change. This creates fear for them. They have a sense of losing control. They want to be available to others. And when we went through the pandemic, this group perhaps had the greatest challenge. They perhaps had the greatest challenge. It was challenging to all of us. I would say this group was most challenged because of the change. Then we can look at the C's. The C's are those who are of excellence. Those are the quality assurance, very much into the details. Now, for the C's to really feel valued is they are those who most likely have awards, well-educated, continuing ed, just continual life learners. And so with this group, when the pandemic hit, how were they being appreciated? How were they receiving their recognition for the work they were doing? How were they feeling valued? Because if I'm an accountant, can I effectively perform my job and get the feedback that's going to give me the push to do even better, to make sure we're 100% accounted for all of the inventory, if it's supply and logistics. And so that was a challenge as well. And so as we see, when we're looking at leadership, when we're looking at teamwork, again, understanding our personality, how we are wired, is great. What's as beneficial is to have an understanding of the team's contributions. Now, this information, and again, a team is a family unit. A team is a sports team. A team is, even in a learning environment, you work in teams. And so the principles here can be applied in any setting as it relates to a team. And once you understand your personality type and you have understanding of your colleagues' personality type, it sets the team up for greater success. And that's what I have for this session. And I would like to go ahead and open it up for questions. I'm not sure how we are on our time. How are we on our time?
We have time on hand. So thank you so much, Emma. That was very enriching. I'd like to hand it over to the students. If you have got any questions, please feel free to ask. You can put your questions in the chat. So Aditya has a question. What type of personality would you associate yourself to? D, I, S, or C?
That's a good question. And what I will say, I'll answer it. What I will say is that because we are in different stages in life, the personality type that you or even myself may be in today, it might be different 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So I said that to say that if I were to go back 20 years for myself, in either case, it has always been reserved. Now, there were seasons and years where I was tasked and reserved. So the C. And where I am now, I have noticed that I've moved because I'm task oriented. I've moved more to a D now, which is task and extrovert, because as a business owner, I've got to be more assertive. There are individuals that I'm communicating with in the community or the organizations. There are other requirements. So that is one thing to be mindful of, is that the personality type will change over time. So now I am a D. What about yourself? Where was yours? Where did you fall?
Yes, Aditya, what about you? Others can put their personality types too. Sahil says no question, as the session is quite excellent and very understandable. But Sahil, we'd like to know your personality type. So Aditya says it's I.
Oh, nice. Very nice. Very, very key. Let me ask you this. As we talked about, well, I talked about the pandemic and how challenging it was for the eyes. Can you share an experience or how you were able to advance? I'll use that word through the pandemic because engagement and people interacting is very important to you. How were you able to advance? What did you do?
Yes, Aditya, would you like to speak or type? Abhinav has a question. I want to know, what do you do when you don't feel confident enough on some days? And we have Aditya's response. There was no such experience in the pandemic era, so I am really sorry for not answering that. But Abhinav asks what he can do when he doesn't feel confident enough.
Well, since we're talking about teamwork, one of the most immediate things to do is talk to someone. And I don't know where you are on the personality chart. However, it's better to talk to someone versus trying to process it alone. So that's what I would encourage you to do if you've not already done that. And then, of course, find something that might be aspiring to you. For example, that may be reading a book. In fact, there were studies that show how important humor has been over the past 2 years. And if more people would watch lighthearted, humorous movies or shows, that was also helpful to their well-being.
I totally second that, Emma. I believe humor is a very key component and a quick way to feel better. And I continuously tell this to my students as well. And in fact, research evidence, and evidence from neuroscience shows, the positive effects of humor on your brain and uplifting your mood in a quicker way. So that's a very good advice to all the students. So I think it's weekend. Everybody can line up a humorous movie for themselves and act on Emma's advice and see on Monday how it feels. Any more questions? Manan says he has an I personality type. So I believe there are no more questions. I would just like to summarize everything for you all. So Emma emphasized the role of soft skills, and she said that today's leaders desire applicants who have the soft skills, the technical, not just the technical hard skills, because they can be taught on the job itself, but soft skills is what today's leaders and employers are looking for. And apparently people with soft skills are viewed as top performers as well. And one of the soft skills that she emphasized is good communication in teamwork, and she tried to help explain how to do this good communication vis-a-vis her DISC model. When you understand your personality better and the personality of your team members better, what D would be, what is I, what is S, and what is C. And based on that, you mold your communications with yourself and your team members. So if you know somebody is D, more task oriented, and people reserved, so you would know, what motivates this person. And I would be people oriented, like she said, values fun and social gatherings. So you would know how to motivate this person, or what may be amiss that's going wrong in this person's life, or why he or she is not performing to the optimal. S would be people oriented but reserved. They fear change. They do not want change. Communication and your interaction and your interpersonal skills with your team member accordingly. A C personality is again task oriented. They look for opportunities to gain new knowledge, learn. So maybe that can act as a self improvement exercises, training, workshops. Maybe that's sort of thing that will motivate them and keep them happy in the team. So the idea is team is a family unit and a learning environment also. This is what I'm just summarizing what Emma said. Once you understand your personality type and your colleague's personality type, it sets the team for greater success. So I hope everybody found today's session. I personally found it very interesting, insightful, and I hope the same for all of you.
Excellent.
I'd like to thank Emma again for taking out time. It was wonderful and a lovely